Well, hello, everyone. This is Ken Hardison, and welcome to another episode of Grow Your Law Firm. And today we have a returning guest, and I think we can never get enough of what we're going to talk about today. I've been doing consulting for 12, 14 years, and I always know I can help a firm because no firm has got intake down. They're always losing money, and there's the most leakage. And some lawyers believe it, some don't. But more money is just wasted and lost from the time a person calls and you don't sign them up or do the submission on the online submissions. I mean, we know we tested it. I mean, last time we did it with our Pillboy masterminds who are supposed to be the best, right? 35% of them never answered an inquiry.
Wow.
That could have been $1 million case.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's the classic, you don't know what you don't know, because, when folks tell us what their conversion rates are, they aren't accounting for what they don't know they missed. And by nature, you can't know something you missed unless you have the mechanisms in place to actively track it. So, I think it begins with that. How do you know you're not missing any calls? Because that's the most obvious place to plug a leak.
So I didn't even get to say your name, but Kerri Coby White.
Thanks, Ken.
And tell us just a little bit about you and your company, and then we'll get right into it.
Sure. So KerriJames is a consulting firm. We have worked really integrating marketing and intake to create that seamless loop so that we can find the way to optimize that marketing budget. And we've done that by creating incredibly data-driven intake systems that enable the firm to see the information that is going to help them improve. And really, my journey into intake was a bit serendipitous in that I didn't have a choice but to become an expert in intake if I was going to make the most of my clients' marketing budgets. And so while I don't do marketing anymore, it really I became so passionate about intake, because if your marketing team isn't passionate about intake, then they really aren't passionate about your success. You can't spend money on marketing and not spend money on intake. It's just not a winning recipe.
Yeah, it's crazy. I used to say, I mean, you spend all this money on marketing, and then you intake it sort of like a second hand deal. But don't worry about it. And
right, and it really is the exact opposite. Lawyers always want to talk about marketing. My time in the industry taught me that intake isn't exactly sexy. People don't call you because they really want to improve their intake. They want to grow. Obviously, I mean, just the name of your podcast, that's the purpose here. And so when I come in and evaluate things, the first thing I'm looking at is intake, because I don't want to spend a dime on marketing until I know that money is going to be well spent. And I think that any firm that puts the cart before the horse and starts marketing before they have really improved their intake, made that seamless system that's going to ensure no lead is left behind, no call is unreturned, no opportunity is wasted, then I think it's a big mistake to spend on marketing.
So you said something a while ago that's very true. People, we don't know what we don't know. So what are the top 3 or 5 things that when you go into a law firm, they just don't know to even look for this? I mean, that's hurting them on the inside.
So they don't know when the highest volume of calls are coming in. So they don't know when to staff up. I think it's pretty obvious to people that, the lunch hours are pretty busy, because working individuals might take time in the middle of the day to make some personal phone calls, including, getting off the phone with the insurance company and finally having had enough and picking and calling an attorney. Well, your team wants to take lunch too. So are you staffing down when your call volume is increasing? We have had many firms that turn their phone system over to call centers at 30 minutes before closing. Well, again, we see an end of day surge, people who go, oh gosh, they're going to close at 5 o'clock. I better get my call in. And so really that's a time of day when you should be staffing up. And so something as simple as really evaluating what peak call times are will help. And what's fascinating, Ken, is even Google has taken to telling consumers when you're busiest. So if you go onto your Google business profile, if you just search your firm, it will show you when you are busiest, when there's the most activity. And typically that's when you're going to have the most calls. So just having a sense of when is my firm really busy in intake, that I need to be sure that my intake team is fully staffed. So that's an easy one. The next thing they need to know is if they are missing calls, which I say if, I mean, most firms are missing calls. How are we following up immediately in that moment? I strongly encourage a missed call text back. So if a call has come to your firm and it's gone unanswered and it's a new number, meaning it's more than likely a lead, then immediately they're going to get a message that says, I'm so sorry we missed the call. We will return your call in a few moments. And that is often—
So what software do you have to do that?
So we do that with our software Loop, closing the loop between marketing and intake, closing the loop between lead and client. So when our calls come in, first and foremost, they're tracked so that we know it's a lead that is new to the system. It's coming in on a tracked number, so we know what campaigns are working for us. And if that call is for some terrible reason missed, which I hate, then that person is going to get a message that says, I'm so sorry, we will ring you back in just a moment. Thanks so much for your patience. And often, especially if you're a small practice, I have found that to be an incredible tool for conversion. You know, if you're a solo practitioner and you are taking your own calls and you're just getting started, well, when your prospective client gets that text, they go, wow, this guy's amazing. Make it personal. Hey, it's John, the attorney you were just trying to reach. I'll ring you right back. And it's like, wow, he just texted me. Like, that's a big deal. So we know that this generation of consumers is more apt to using text messaging in the first place. So if you can engage them that way, let's run with that. And then what's the system for notifying your team? A, you missed a call, you ding dongs. And B, what's the plan? Who's getting on the phone with that person and how quickly are they going to do it? And what's the plan? Something as simple as saying, well, the second a call is missed, the intake team, the distribution list in your email system likely is notified. It goes in a round robin. The first thing that person does is make the call. And they likely need to make that call twice. Once knowing that the individual is unlikely to answer the call from an unknown caller, and the second time because then they might think it's important. So I want to know that when a call is missed, my team is notified, they pick up the phone and call, and they pick up the phone and call again. And then every firm should know what the exact follow-up system is for an unengaged lead. And an unengaged lead is going to be someone whose call you missed, or it could be someone who did a form fill online late at night, whatever it may be. Someone who you have not yet actually connected with personally is an unengaged lead. And every firm should be able to answer me on the nose, what's the plan for contacting that individual?
Yeah. So I know what phone systems do you recommend? Because I know some phone systems, or you can get or different software. Of course, you got your own proprietary that will you can ring up and see how many dropped calls. People were they just hung up before you answered, right?
Yes. And that's, that's interesting because as everything has become touch activated, there are more abandoned calls than I saw, 5-10 years ago. An abandoned call is a call that didn't connect with the firm. But if they accidentally hit an ad and they go, oh, I didn't mean to call, that's going to appear as a missed call. So be gentle on your team when it comes to that. Know that there is going to be a degree of abandoned calls, which means someone touched the link and didn't mean to make the call. So have a little there.
So when you say drop calls and abandoned calls, is that the same thing or is that two different things?
Yeah, so it is two different things. So a missed call, as far as I'm concerned, a missed call is a call that rang and went to voicemail or turned over. That's a missed call. And honestly, guys, I listen to a lot of calls, Ken. There are too many firms that are letting calls go 4 or 5 rings. I'm an incredibly impatient person. That's a lot for me. If I am not answered in 2 rings, I'm like, geez, let's move on. 2 rings.
Yeah.
So you should
That's
have,
me.
yeah, you need to have a plan for 2 rings. So if you don't get somebody answering a phone in 2 rings, to me, that's a missed call. An abandoned call is typically a call that never connected, but the person who called is the one who hung up quickly enough. And that's usually because, like I said, they clicked on an ad. They didn't realize it was going to be a click to call.
Does your software catch that, or do you have to have some
No,
other
so that's what I'm
software?
saying. So both in our software, in CallRail software, that's all going to show up as a missed call. Someone dialed it and didn't connect. So that's where I say, go easy on your team with that one, because the numbers may look artificially inflated. So set a number, knowing that those false clicks are going to happen. When I come in and I'm looking at a firm, if I see that there are 15 missed, and again, I'm using that term lightly, missed calls, that looks high, but it may be that 13 of them were sloppy clicks. So the most important thing is that you look for trends. And so if you see, okay, well, we were 13 this month, but we were 42 last month. Okay, now we're getting, the same number of errant touches, but my team is on it. They are improving that. So everything is about looking at the data, at the trends. Are we getting better or worse? Do we need to staff up? If we have so much call volume that our team isn't getting to the phone, well, in theory, that should be a great thing if we have such high call volume, but not if they're lousy leads. So make sure you're evaluating the volume with the quality. So I'd rather have far fewer high quality leads that my team can handle than overwhelming my team to the point where they're missing calls and spending time on weak leads.
So I get this question a lot, and I think it differs with different firms, but what people say, okay, I'm getting 200 calls, I'm getting 50 calls a week, or I'm getting 100 calls a week. Have you got kind of like a protocol, how many take people you need? Because like you said, sometimes they all come together in 2 or 3 hours.
Honestly, Ken, we've all experienced that just in our personal lives. The second you call your mother, your brother calls. I mean, it's life. I mean, that there is a degree of that. And so you want to have a plan in place for overflow calls that may not be designated staff, but really consider the overflow to a designated call center. So you want to have your phone system set up that if you are a firm that only has 3 people on intake, and I really do think 3 is a really good number, plan for growth, be ahead of it. At a minimum, I like to see 3, which means 2 people are on calls. Someone's handling the inbound leads that need to be outbound calls. And that, there is a recipe to it. And we do evaluate the number of calls a firm gets. The average intake call is about 32 minutes based on the data we've seen across systems, but not every call is an intake. There are going to be a lot of calls that, they're property damage only, or they were looking for a divorce lawyer, whatever it may be. So you have to really get to know your lead sources and the quality of calls that you're getting. If you are only spending a limited budget on a very high-end detailed campaign and you're paying the price for those leads, those should be high quality calls converting at a 25% rate at a minimum, which means that your firm will get 4 calls in a day and convert just 1 of them, which is, it's not the greatest conversion, but that's what we're seeing across specific campaigns. Now, if you balance that with your reputational, your online reputation, your ongoing marketing in your area, you should be generating other calls more organically as well. So when you balance this all out, you're saying to yourself, okay, if I have 3 people, can they handle 4 32-minute calls a day? Well, you start doing the math and it quickly becomes pretty busy. So instead of pulling a paralegal into intake, which they're not trained for, they're doing their own important work. I like to have my firms roll over to a call center knowing that they're trained for intake. That serves 2 purposes. Number 1, they're not going to miss that call. And number 2, they're going to get somebody who's trained to convert.
So we'll put you on the spot. What's your top 2 intake centers?
Yeah, so Lawyer Line is doing a great job for me right now. I'm a big fan of Lawyer Line because they offer me Spanish calling, their prices are good, and they answer the phone. And I can say this, I really do feel for call centers in this post-pandemic era. It is hard filling these seats, and across and we've used a lot of them, and we have seen some missed calls even from call centers, which just makes me boil. I mean,
Yeah.
you are not paying a call center to get voicemail, and I see it happen. So Lawyer Line has been very reliable for us. For the smaller practices, I see Smith as a good solution because of the kind of price per call, which if you're sending specific campaigns to that call center, you do well there. And Legal Conversion Center, LCC, they've also done a very good job for us. And I love how dialed into their data and how results oriented they are. There are a lot of choices, but one of the things I find so fascinating is that so many lawyers start call centers because they want to do it better. And so I think we continue to see new people come to the market in that space. I toy with it myself all the time. I want us to do a top-notch job, and that requires top-notch training. So if you're going to spend the money on those marketing campaigns that I know these attorneys are spend the money on ongoing training. Make sure your team is engaged in sales processes and ongoing empathy training. This is an important role. And if you're going to spend the money on marketing, you darn well better spend the money keeping your team at the top of their game.
So
break the house.
yeah. So how do you know if these intake centers are dropping the calls?
Oh, again, back to the call tracking. I go bananas when I have calls that are unanswered. So my system will show me based on specific numbers. So if I have a specific campaign that ends in 1111, I can look up that specific phone number and see how many missed calls there were. I can also listen to it on my software and know if it was an abandoned call or a missed call. Because remember, an abandoned call, it's not going to ring and ring out. It's going to ring and then someone's going to quickly abandon it. So really get into those little details there.
So offshore people, I know we've got some mastermind members at Pillman that are starting to use those. And it with very success. I see some of them doing really good with it, and I see some of them struggling with it. I mean, what do you see? And I mean, what do you recommend?
Yeah, so I think the success attorneys have mirrors the success I've had myself. When you truly prepare an outsourced team, you train them the way you want them to be trained, you can have incredible results. These are hardworking people who are dedicated and eager to please. Great results, but you've got to put the time in up front, which means either finding a call center like a 1-800-GO answer. They have a Caribbean call center that they've done a fantastic job. They are hospitality trained, but you pay more for that. When you find Filipinos, they have fantastic English skills, but you've got to put the training in yourself for how these calls are going to be handled. So just like any outsourced person that I've hired for, design work online, it's all going to come down to how well I prepare them. Am I giving them the exact path I want every call to follow? Am I giving them the exact phrases I want them to use? Have I armed them with actual sales reasons to hire this firm? I always tell my clients, you have to remember that this is a mutual evaluation period. You've got to give this caller a reason to hire your firm, and you don't want your call center to just rattle off a bunch of facts. It has to be woven into a natural conversation. And this comes down to, again, listening and providing feedback. So if you're going to what I think the value of offshore in particular for large firms is really there, because you want to have a big team and you want to have those Spanish speaking folks as well. You should really invest in a single intake manager who you're going to have hold the call center accountable, review those calls, train those people, get them on a rally cry call every morning, and really urge them to become the salespeople that you need them to be. It's a special skill. There's this, there's the empathy side and there's the conversion side, and you've got to marry these things. You've got to hold people accountable. You've got to listen to your calls and keep training based on the results.
So when you said have a manager, on-site manager where they're at, or
Well, both. I mean, if you are doing an offshore, if you are outsourcing yourself, then you're going to likely find somebody who has an established call center where they have someone on site who is managing that call center. That's what I'd want to see. But that's going to be managing a call center in Nicaragua somewhere. And you're going to see that they are managing the people in that space, but you as the firm should have someone who's managing that team, providing explicit feedback, reviewing your calls, ensuring that the calls are answered, following up on the speed that outbound calls are made, all the things that you want your intake manager to do, whether it's an internal team or an external team. And what I'm saying when it comes to outsourcing, just because you've outsourced doesn't mean that you don't have someone overseeing intake at a very granular level in your firm. Intake is that important. It is a department, whether you're hiring a call center to handle it or you're doing it in-house, somebody has to be responsible for constantly improving and optimizing intake.
Then of course you got to listen to calls, right? I mean,
You got to listen to calls. There's no way around it. I mean, you've got to listen to it, or you have to hire someone that does. And score them, report them, flag them. You know, I don't expect every attorney to listen to every call by any means, but I do expect them to know whether we're getting better or worse. When things start slipping, when conversion rates are dipping, when we get complaints, we got to know when that happened, why, and who needs training. There's a great line that I've come across recently regarding KPIs, and we all know how important those data points are. But the thing is that KPIs can't just be these arbitrary bullets in time. They need to keep people informed. That's the purpose of a KPI. So keep people informed. If we missed 3 phone calls this month, way to go, team. You guys are 50% better than you were the month before. If I see something change, well, son of a gun, is it that my call volume has gone up, which is great, but my team isn't prepared? That's not good. So you need to keep people informed based on that data. Data is data is data. There's just all this stuff out there. It doesn't have meaning until we apply meaning to it and use it in a way that builds intelligence. So if I can see that my drop calls are way down, that's awesome. But that might not be awesome if it's because my call volume itself has decreased dramatically and one of my campaigns is failing miserably. You need to look at the data, and somebody in-house needs to be responsible for that data. It's a cool position though, Ken. I really think that you know, these young folks now, I think you give them a job that involves data and you're telling them, hey, this is what I want to see happen. It's very specific. Like the firm missed 4 calls last month. The goal is no more than 3 this month. And you actually say, okay, so now we missed 3 calls this month. When did they all occur? Oh, they all occurred at between 4:30 and 5 p.m. Well, what are we doing about that? You know, let's actually look at the data to problem solve and find better ways to do things. Data is fascinating that way.
Yeah, but having data just for the sake of having data is not worth the crap.
No, and that's what I think a lot of people do. Yeah, a lot of people just collect data. You can't just collect it. You have to use it. And it's just data until you layer it with your business intelligence. What do you know about your firm that we can use that data to actually make ourselves stronger? Is it about hiring? Is it about reorganizing the staff? Is it about timing? You know, we had one firm that we just had to shift the times. Like we had everybody starting at 8:30 in the morning and the phone's turning off at 4, and we needed to shift that. We weren't getting calls at 8:30 in the morning. We weren't getting calls till 9:30, and we needed to stay on the phones till 5:30. So something as simple as that. Use the data to inform your decisions.
Yeah. So how do you, I know a lot of lawyers now are looking at conversion rate on not just the number of calls coming in, but the cases wanted.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I look at cases, again, we want to know how many engaged prospects we have, which means somebody reached out to us and we successfully connected with them. So if we're getting those inbound form fills and we can't get them on the phone, we need to evaluate that process. Is it because we're not doing a great job, or because they're just highly unmotivated prospects? We can't, if somebody really has absolutely no interest in hiring a lawyer, they just wanted to get that free lead magnet you had on your website, we're not going to make a client out of them. And there are going to be those folks. So I don't necessarily look at it as every lead is one I want if I don't have the details. Once I have the details, if I know it's a lead I want, I absolutely want to know that I've made absolutely every attempt to convert that client. So I look at it as the number of opportunities, the number of engaged opportunities, the number won, and the number lost. And that difference between the won and the lost is really important. When you decline a case, that's because you didn't want it. And you may have 60 declines in any given month, but I'm really paying attention to the 2 lost. Why did we lose those 2? Well, it may be, I look at this a lot. They got overwhelmed. The paperwork was just too much. And they're like, I need to think about it. Let me talk to my husband. And so they didn't get it done that day. And then they decided to wait till next week. And then we didn't call them back fast enough, or they went with someone else. That's a lost case. And we need to evaluate that. Another firm I work with, they are all into only in-person signups. So they schedule the sign up. And you know what? They're losing 12 a month. 12 people that they scheduled to sign up. You can't do that. So you have to look at the lost number. So we may have 100 cases signed and only 2 lost. It's the 2 lost that I'm paying attention to, because those 2 lost may have been huge cases and something went wrong in our process. Or it could be something as simple as they didn't sign on the spot, and then they looked at our online reviews and they weren't what they wanted them to be. So we have to evaluate that stuff. So hey, make sure
I want to give a little tip, because you said something. And it worked for me, and it's worked for a lot of our masterminds. We used to have 2 retainers, and one of them had a deal where in 30 days they could let us go. They could fire us with no fees, no cost. And what we would do is, if somebody said, because it happened a lot, that was the biggest objection. Let me talk to my husband, my father, my boyfriend, my girl, somebody.
Yes.
And we say, well, listen, let's go ahead and get to work on it, because they're working on it. Sign this. Here's paragraph 8, says that you can fire us first 30 days. Talk to your husband. If he says no, just call us up, fire it. We'll send you the file back. Exactly. That takes away that. So that's, and did it work every time? No, but it probably worked at least 50% of the time.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And that's the thing, for personal injury attorneys compared to everybody else out there, you're saying this is a contingency fee. This doesn't cost you anything. So let's just get this done. Let's get it started. Let's move it along. And that's why I really like the 2-part intake, where this is this mutual evaluation period. Can I help you? Meaning, is this a case I want to take? And do you want to work with us? And I've got to give my team reasons to convey our ability to solve their problem. If we can do that, then let's get this 1-page engagement letter signed. And that's that simple one. And I always tell my intake team, you want to have the top 3 things they need to know looking at this. 1, 2, 3, we're going to go over this. We're going to sign it on the phone. And as soon as we're done with that, we're going to schedule your comprehensive intake. And in addition to giving that person that moment of burden transfer, wow, we've got this done. We're in good hands now. This is going to be taken care of. They also have time to say, let me get all the information I need together, while we have the opportunity to wow them with our client service. So they may get that, some video message delivered from the founder of the firm. They'll get a message letting them know when and where and what they need to bring. So it really helps ease that transition between lead and client. And I can tell you, a lot of folks drop off. You got to have that attrition between folks who sign and folks who really come in. We need to ease that time right there, because what I have found, and we've all experienced this in any kind of sales process, the sales folks are really motivated, but not necessarily the onboarding folks, the folks who have to do the work of getting this person fully invested. And so we need to make that a positive period for a law firm. In fact, Ken, I bet if you ask firms to go look at their Google reviews, they will find people who say, I haven't heard from them. It's been 2 weeks. And it's like, wait a second, they called me 7 times trying to get me signed up, and now 2 weeks have gone by and I haven't heard a thing. We need to improve that part of the process. So what I like, again, the one pager, let's just get you signed up here so that we can schedule your intake interview. It really takes the pressure off of everybody. And in a personal injury firm, without having to put fees up front, you're really in good shape that way.
Good deal. Good deal.
Yeah. And another thing on that one, Ken, if I can just add, those little one pagers, super easy to deliver via text, which creates a heck of a lot less friction. People are not checking their email anymore. So if you're going through a system like DocuSign or HelloSign, you're making people take another step. They have to go sign in. They can't find their password. I didn't get it. It went to spam. Again, eliminate the friction as much as possible. Send a simple one pager that they can sign on their phone.
Yeah. You always want to make it as easy as you can for somebody to take action.
Absolutely.
That's one of my when I was taking this copywriting course one time, they said, you just make it real simple, and
that's it. Yeah, Donald Miller
make it easy. Make it easy,
Right. Confuse you lose is the Donald Miller line. So we're giving people too much mumbo jumbo. And honestly, Ken, it was actually an attorney I was working with on our custom software solution. And we, went to lawyers and had our appropriate agreements made so that we were, showing how we protected data and all of that. And one lawyer looked at it. It was like, 4 pages of teeny tiny text. And he said, look, I'm a lawyer. If I've got to read all this lawyer stuff to get started, I'm out. He's like, tell me what the deal is. And you know what? We scrapped that 4-page agreement and said, here's what we do. Here's what we ask you to do. Are we in agreement? And really, you need to do the same thing for your clients. Make it easy for them to understand what the agreement is, and then get into the nitty-gritty once you have them over the line.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're getting close to the end, but I got one more question.
Yeah. Sure.
Lawyers versus lay people doing intakes. I mean, I know some lawyers that insist on lawyers doing them, or at least doing them on bigger cases. And then I know some people that say, I don't want my lawyers touching it because they're too negative. I want my salespeople.
And that goes back to confuse you lose. I mean, I do think lawyers have a way of getting really into the weeds. And so you don't need to know everything about a case and everything about the way insurance companies and negotiations and settlements and mediation and deposition. You don't need to know all this. And so a lawyer does tend to get into those weeds. I really think this again goes back to the 2-part intake. If I get you all signed up, then we're going to have this meeting scheduled, and typically over Zoom, where they do that comprehensive intake, and the attorney has the Zoom link to pop in and ask any questions they want to ask, have the opportunity to make introductions. Again, though, that transition between lead and client is so important that one of the things we like to do with that 2-part intake is, while that time between the initial sign up and the full intake interview, they're getting an introduction to their attorney. They're getting that profile picture and letting them know, if you have any questions, please be prepared to share them at that meeting. So I really think you're better off having a skilled intake team. Get that signature before you take your attorneys into it. If you have a really big case and they let you know, we're evaluating this with 3 other lawyers in town, and you really want someone to get on the call with them, obviously there are going to be exceptions that require that person to step in.
Okay, I've got to ask you about your new book before we go. Tell me about your new book.
I'm super excited, Ken. It's called The Law Firm Growth Machine. And basically, after 5 years of high-end custom engagements, we have made the growth system, this connectivity between leads, between marketing, intake, and service. And we've put it all together so that you really can grow a law firm, even if you're just a solo practitioner. So we're really excited to have that out there. Folks can go to lawfirmgrowthmachine.com to pick up a free copy of the digital version of the book. Or reach out to me at lawfirmgrowthmachine.com, and I can even send you a hard copy.
Yeah, it is a great book. So I recommend it highly.
Thank you. And hey, again, it's simple. We want it to be really actionable. So if you're a lawyer looking to grow your law firm, we got all the goods in there.
Good deal. Well, great. Well, listen, this has been really good. I like digging into weeds on this stuff with you. Very insightful.
You always ask the right questions, Ken. Every attorney needs to ask them. So thanks so much for coming.
Well, thank you. Well, listen, until next time, this is how did they want to get up with you? Where'd they go?
Oh yeah,
Sorry.
please, sure. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Kerri, Kerri, Coby, Coby, White, like the color. You'll find me in all those places, or email me, Kerri, Kerri, at KerriJames.co.
All righty, good deal. Thank you so much. Till next time, this is Ken Hardison, dedicated to your success.